pro-Israel lobby in Britain, but we weren't expecting one of its most influential members to turn up outside an event where we were filming last month. Trevor Chin, I've got a couple of questions. I'm a journalist. Are you able to give us a quick interview, sir? No. I know you're a very generous benefactor to the Labour Party. What do you think about the situation in Gaza at the moment? Why do you donate so much money to the Labour Party, Sir Chin? So that was Sir Trevor Chin, one of the most significant pro-Israel lobbyists in the UK. He's donated tens of thousands of pounds to various Labour MPs, including Keir Starmer. In fact, it was Trevor Chin who made that secret donation during the leadership election, which was only declared after Keir Starmer had won. Joining me now to discuss this is my colleague, John McAvoy. Now, John, I mentioned there Trevor Chin's donation to Keir Starmer, the £50,000 that he gave him, but he's been giving money to lots of other Labour MPs as well, hasn't he? Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, we found at Declassified that the pro-Israel lobby had donated to 13 of 25 members of Starmer's cabinet when he first came into power. And Trevor Chin is a key kind of figure in this. He's donated to, as you mentioned, Starmer. He's donated to David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, on various occasions. He's donated to Lisa Nandy while she was Vice Chair of the Labour Friends of Palestine. Also Rachel Reeves, the current Chancellor, Angela Rayner, Wes Streeting as well. So he's one of the most significant donors to the Labour Party, I would say.
And what are his specific links to David Lammy? Because we're going to talk in a minute about this secret meeting that he had with him, but he's got a long history there, hasn't he?
Yeah, a very long history. So in 2012, David Lammy accompanied Trevor Chin to Israel on a delegation which was organised by Labour Friends of Israel, which also happens to have been funded at times by Trevor Chin, for David Lammy's mayoral campaign to become Mayor of London in, I believe, 2014-2015. He received around £30,000 from Trevor Chin. Now, that campaign was also directed from David Menzer, another former chair of Labour Friends of Israel, who's currently a spokesperson for the Israeli government.
In Gaza today, there's no famine caused by Israel. There is a man-made shortage, but it's been engineered by Hamas.
Following that, over the past few years, he's received several donations. David Lammy has received several donations from an organisation called Labour Together, which is effectively a kind of a very controversial think tank, one of the key funders of which is Trevor Chin. So Trevor Chin and David Lammy have this kind of long history together.
Trevor, obviously you've got long experience of both the UK and Israel.
I spent my entire life working for Israel, for a better image for Israel, for success for Israel, and getting people like this involved with Israel.
And if you give a lot of money to politicians, you might expect that you get sort of privileged access to them. Now, we can't say for sure that's what's happened, but tell us about this meeting that Trevor Chin had recently with David Lammy.
Well, what we've found just in the past week is that Trevor Chin has held 2 off-the-books meetings with UK Foreign Secretary David Lammy and also the Foreign Minister for the Middle East, Hamish Falconer. Now, ordinarily, meetings between Foreign Office officials should be declared in transparency data that's published by the Foreign Office. Yet these meetings didn't show up at all, and we only found out about them because we issued a Freedom of Information request to the Foreign Office to ask whether, key officials like Lammy and Falconer had been meeting with Labour Friends of Israel, Trevor Chin, and various different, organisations and individuals associated with the pro-Israel lobby in Britain. And it came back that indeed David Lammy had met with Trevor Chin in February this year. The meeting with Falconer was in March this year. But the Foreign Office has refused to say what was discussed. They say these were political meetings, so, they didn't have access. There were no other diplomats involved in these meetings. But given Trevor Chin's past, it seems likely, at least, that, Israel and Gaza was quite high on the agenda.
The reason why I actually recognised Trevor Chin as he was getting out of the taxi is I just finished editing one of your earlier stories about him, and I've been looking through the photo archives for a picture. I mean, there aren't actually that many of him. So yeah, that's how I recognised him. But your last article was about a meeting, not with a political figure, but with someone in the civil service. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, so this was one of the Foreign Office's top diplomats, Christian Turner. And this meeting with Trevor Chin actually did show up in the transparency data. So what we did was we issued a separate Freedom of Information request to ask what was discussed. Now, in the transparency data, it was said that the topic of discussion was geopolitics with a businessman. And when we got the emails back concerning the meeting, it turned out that they'd been discussing effectively Britain's arms exports to Israel. And the key subject of conversation was the 2nd of September decision by the Labour government that Israel was not compliant with international humanitarian law and thereby certain suspensions of arms. Obviously not all, about 8% of all arms sales to Israel were suspended thereafter. Given Trevor Chinn's, history, it's not altogether surprising that he was seemingly very concerned about this suspension of arms exports to Israel.
And you actually approached Trevor Chinn through 3 different organisations he's been involved with for comment for that story. You didn't get any response, and that was kind of our grounds for doorstepping him as he got out of that taxi. But can you set the scene and give us a bit more background about who is Trevor Chinn and what are his views on Israel?
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, the day that you doorstepped Trevor Chinn, he was entering Chatham House. And, at the same time, you had an Israeli opposition figure, Yair Golan, who was addressing a meeting at Chatham House. Now, Yair Golan is, as I said, an opposition figure, but in the past he's been incredibly supportive of Israel's actions in Gaza. In October 2023, Yair Golan said that the starvation of Gaza was totally legitimate. I think back in 2007, he was actually disciplined by the Israeli military for using Palestinians as human shields. So this is the kind of person that Trevor Chinn was going to presumably meet at Chatham House that day. But going back through his history, I mean, Trevor Chinn has funded Labour Friends of Israel, he's funded Conservative Friends of Israel, he's sat on the board of BICOM, which is a kind of a pro-Israel media lobbying organisation. And just in November 2024, about six or so months ago, he was awarded a Medal of Honour by Israeli President Isaac Herzog. This is the same Isaac Herzog who was cited by the International Court of Justice as having said the entire nation of Gaza was responsible for the events of October the 7th.
It's an entire nation out there that is responsible. It's not true. This rhetoric about civilians not aware, not involved, it's absolutely not true.
And these words were used as evidence of plausible incitement to genocide. So this is the person who gave Trevor Chinn a medal just 6 months ago, right in the middle of the world's most televised genocide.
And Trevor Chinn made his money through the motoring industry. He's been very involved with the AA, the RAC and QuickFit. So, potentially he's giving all this money to Labour because he's very concerned about anti-car legislation that might be coming down the line. But as you say, because he won't respond to comment, didn't want to give us an interview there on the doorstep of Chatham House, it's very hard to know what really motivates him, but he's clearly heavily involved with the Israeli political scene. Receiving a medal just last year from the country's president, I think, speaks volumes.
Whenever we actually see government documents relating to Trevor Chinn, at least the ones that we've accessed, we've gone to the National Archives, we've looked at files with the title Pro-Israel Lobby in Britain, and Trevor Chinn is all over them. You can see him lobbying John Major over, that Conservative government's policy towards Israel during the 1990s. All of these recent freedom of information requests that we've been given, I mean, Trevor Chinn is, focused seemingly solely on Israel. So, I mean, it's clear that he has interest in the motoring business. But whenever his name appears in these government documents, it's typically to do with Israel. It's also important to mention that he's not necessarily a self-made man. He made millions in the automobile industry. But his father, Yosser Chinn, was also a very rich, so-called philanthropist. He contributed a lot of money to the Jewish National Fund in Britain, which has been described by Ilan Pappé as basically a colonial movement to, buy up land in Palestine and increase the kind of demographics of Jewish people there in order to force out the indigenous population. So he's not, he's not a self-made man. He came into that industry with a lot of money already and a kind of a familial history in the pro-Israel lobby.
Thanks, John. We're going to keep investigating the pro-Israel lobby in Britain and trying to doorstep key figures involved in it. If you want to help us do this work, please share this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. You can also sign up to our mailing list on the website, and we're trying to get 3,000 paying subscribers to Declassified, so you can find out more details about that in the link below. Thanks for watching.